2, 1. Let's go. It's time to Dad Up. Welcome to the Dad Up Podcast, the podcast for dads about dads being dads. Get ready for exciting guests talking about their experiences of parenting, the good and the not so good. Bang that subscribe button so you don't miss a single episode, and let's get started. Here is your host, Bryan Ward.
Welcome to another episode of Dad Up, everyone. Thank you very much for joining me today. I'm super excited for the guest that I have on. He's become a really good friend of mine, and I'm dying to get into just kind of his backstory because he has such a fascinating story. And then obviously, you know, this is a podcast about kids, so I'm dying to hear about his kids as well. My good friend, Erik Allen, has joined me. Welcome to the show, brother.
Thank you so much. Really, truly an honor to be here, Bryan. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, thank you, man. I appreciate you and appreciate all the things that you're doing. For my listeners who may not know who you are, let's go through a backstory. Give me the backstory of Erik Allen and let my listeners know who you are, what you're up to. And then obviously this is a podcast about your family, about kids. So
yeah,
a little bit about your family as well.
Awesome. Yeah. I mean, I grew up in the typical household, is what I thought. And then my parents got divorced when I was 11. My mom immediately got together with a guy who was very physically abusive. I actually had to fight him off her with a cast iron pan when I was 13 years old. Yeah, lots of blood. Kicked out of the house at a freshman year, and then basically lived on my own from then on. And it set me on this path of destruction for 10 years. I was 18 years old, got arrested for having a bong, had to go to jail, black and white chain gang outfit on. Woke up to note 2 weeks after I graduated high school. It said, "Hey, you can't comply with house rules. You have 48 hours to get out." So I moved 21 times between 18 and 21 years old, living off of credit cards, making a move to Seattle. By the time I'm 21, I'm $28,000 in debt and had to file bankruptcy, and then got a job in the music business. Always a dream to get in the music business, but it was very bad for my addictions. So I was living that rock star lifestyle for about 2 years. I went to about 175 concerts and didn't pay for a single drink ever. But it was this rock star lifestyle, just being like sales and marketing guy. I don't know how to play anything, but got laid off my 1 year anniversary of being there. This was during the Napster days back in the day, if people remember that. And then it kind of set me into more depression until one day, this girl walked into Starbucks where I was working and invited me to a church event. And I was like, I was depressed. I was alone, didn't have any friends. And she was really good looking. Absolutely. What time do I need to be there? That was my thought process, And so I went to this church event and I ended up knowing all these guys like from 3-5 years ago. And I was like, man, I haven't seen them forever, right? It was weird because I was living on the other side of the state where I grew up. And it was like, man, I remember you from college, or I remember you from high school. Like, what are you doing up here? And it was like a month later. It was Easter 2004. I was managing a band. We went out and played a concert the night before Easter. And I wake up Easter morning surrounded by probably 15 guys. And in that moment, I felt God say, you are going down this path that's going to end your life very quickly if you don't start making some changes. And so I decided in that moment to give my life to Christ right there in my buddy's basement. And I quit cold turkey, drugs, drinking, cigarettes, everything in that moment. And I called that girl up and I got her voicemail and said, "Hey, thanks for inviting me to that church event. Maybe I'll see you at the store sometime." And now she's my wife 17 years later. And man, she was the angel that came to really pull me out of that rut, I think. And now, of course, I've got 2 awesome podcasts. The Erik Allen Show drops every Friday and the Top Rated MMA Show drops every Saturday. And I talk with entrepreneurs, world changers, and success-minded people on the Erik Allen Show, and talk with up-and-coming MMA fighters from around the world on the Top Rated MMA Show.
Wow. Okay. So how many kids you have? You have
2
two
kids,
right?
Yep. 11 and 8.
Okay. All right. Very cool. Now we got to back up. Okay, so you're living a rock star life. I gotta ask: is it the ZZ Top look that you were going for with the beard?
So funny. Yeah, I used to just grow the beard out for 1 month out of the year. It wasn't during like November or whatever they call it. It was just 1 month out of the year. I'd grow it out and then I'd shave it off. And then when my daughter was like 3 or 4 years old, I shaved it off. And I just remember her saying, "I miss the beard." And I was like, all right, well, she's saying she missed the beard. I'm not shaving the beard off anymore. And so I kind of, I've been growing it out since, and I will trim it up. Usually this is pretty long. Typically I keep it just maybe an inch or 2 shorter, but I think it's more falling into the Duck Dynasty crowd than it is the ZZ Top.
Yeah, yeah. I can see that too. That's cool.
Yeah.
Well, I like it's a great look, and
Thank you.
I don't know what you'd look like without one, but I mean, obviously your daughter approves, so I guess that's
Yes.
all that matters.
Right. Yep. But she's 11 now, so it just is still here. And we've talked about it, like, hey, do you want me to shave the beard? Nope, I like the beard. And my wife, she's like, oh, okay, right. So.
Okay, so cool. So I mean, you get kicked out of the house, you end up in jail. I mean, I know you talk about this kind of getting invited to this church event, obviously.
Yeah.
Do you think that was the start of God speaking to you? Do you think it was meeting your wife? Do you think it was just kind of God speaking to your heart in the trouble? I mean, do you think maybe it was all those things that really drove you to change the path that you were going?
Yeah, it was definitely a combination of, I mean, one, my wife, I'd seen her in my Starbucks store before. She'd come in. She does not drink coffee. She would come in and just do homework. And I was too shy to talk to her except for to, take her order. And that was it. But she had invited me to that church event. And I think God was really planting that seed in me in that moment and starting to tug on my heart, because I was really at a low point where, here I was depressed. I was living in this really ghetto apartment. I'd get off work at Starbucks, go get a 6-pack of beer, go to Hollywood Video and rent a movie and go drink myself to sleep every night. It was my daily routine. I didn't really have any close friends. I lived in, I'm talking like really ghetto apartment, and it was crazy. The police would come there every other day, but it was all I could afford. I had this car that, when I filed bankruptcy, my Acura Integra got towed away. I had to watch it go away. So I was at this really low point, and I think God sent her into my life in that moment to really start to make me think, man, I need to make some changes, or I just accepted life as it was. I didn't have any goals or anything like that. And the cool thing is, and I think God does this really cool thing, is he brings people into your life that are really meant to be there. My wife and I, we were actually both born at exactly the same minute, 1:41 p.m., different days, different years, but the exact same minute on our birthday.
Really?
Yeah.
Wow. Okay. Well, I guess that's a sign right there. I
mean,
yeah. That's crazy. That's awesome. Well, very cool. Now, you had talked about, you'd woke up, you said 15 guys around you. What did you mean by that? I mean, paint that picture a little bit more.
Yeah. So my buddy had a big basement in his house in Prosser, Washington. And, we just were a bunch of buddies that we went out, and I managed the band. They played a night, a concert that night before Easter. And we all came back to his house to go party afterwards. So we were all drinking, and, we didn't have a lot of bedrooms, but he had a huge basement. So we were all just kind of passed out on the floor, right?
Okay.
And I'm an early riser. Even back then, I was still kind of an early riser, and I woke up at 5 o'clock in the morning. Everyone was still sleeping, but I felt in my heart in that moment, I was like, dude, I'm done. Like, this is not for me anymore. And I decided to give my life to Christ. I got out of the house, I got in my car and drove back to Seattle where I lived. And, that was that moment that I think God was really calling me in to be in his hands. I had a pastor friend tell me one time that God kind of has us on puppet strings, right? And when we sin, he cuts the strings and he reties it, and we become a little bit closer to him. And it was like that string was finally in his hands. Like there was no string left. I was finally there in God's hands for me to take it, take me away from that life.
Yeah. And it's interesting because when we find that pull, now for my listeners, this is not a show on faith and all that, but Erik is very deep in his faith. I'm very deep in my faith. And, when we talk about parenting, a lot of it does come from our faith and the things that we believe in spiritually, whatever it is that you believe spiritually, whatever it is. But when we talk about, kind of feeling that tug to be closer to him, at the same moment, the devil works in a way to try to pull you away.
For sure.
And he tries to sell you on things, whether psychologically, even could be real tangible assets. He tries to sell you on things to pull you further away. Did you have any of those experiences? Because I'll tell you, the reason I ask is because I too, at one point, I didn't quite have the path that you had, but I too, at one point, had a problem with drinking. Mm-hmm. And I had I made a decision in my life because I grew up in an alcoholic family. I saw myself going down that same road of raising my two boys in an alcoholic family. I found myself, I'd be sitting on the couch or sitting in my chair watching TV, and I'd tell them to go to the fridge and get me a beer. And those kind of moments kind of woke me up and said, what the heck are you doing? Yeah. And so I made a decision to just stop cold turkey. Now, people that have an addiction problem, it's been proven that people that have an addiction problem really have a hard time with stopping cold turkey. They say that you should try to do a gradual step, and also get into some meetings and things like that, and get around a support group. Totally. But I didn't. I just stopped cold turkey, and I haven't looked back. And I just celebrated this last week. I just celebrated 12 years. So I haven't looked back. So the reason I share all that, and the reason I asked that original question, is what moment, because I know there's a moment, and I know there's times in there where the devil was pulling on you to pull you back away. Did you have that experience, and can you share any of that with me?
I think there was moments where, basically what I first had to do was I had to take myself out of that environment, right? I had to get into an environment where I knew that I would be safe mentally and wouldn't have that draw towards alcohol or partying. So I called my buddies up when I got home and I said, look, guys, I got to get healthy. I got to take a break from managing the band. I got to take a break from going to the bars. And I took like 6 months where I wasn't calling anybody. I wasn't going to the bar. And you know what? Those guys are still my friends today. They said, man, you got to get healthy. You got to do what you got to do. And what I did was I replaced that partying time with spending time with guys that were successful in business, successful in their marriage, successful in their walks with Christ. And I started like interviewing them, almost taking them to coffee and going, man, tell me your story. How do I get there? Right. And so I really deep dove really far into as much as I could sponge up. Immediately I was doing that. And there has been times throughout the years where I get frustrated where, I lost a job, or I got fired from a job, or man, we had to file, we had to short sell our home, like those moments draw me back to like these thoughts in my head going, man, you're a loser. Like, remember that past, remember that thing that you did as a kid, or remember that thing that you had to do that caused you to drink. You're in that same situation now. You need to go get a drink. Like, I've had those thoughts over the years. And it's been tough sometimes to really go, man, I'm going to not listen to that voice. And I know that God's got a different plan for me. And like I said, I had to remove myself from that environment. So when I get those thoughts, I immediately go to prayer. I immediately start reading a book, or immediately call my buddy and go, man, let me just tell you what's going on right now in my head. And I love the circle that I've got of great friends that can lift me up in that.
I love that. And I love that you shared that, those moments do happen, especially with, people that do have addiction problems. Those moments are going to happen. And the same thing for me. I'll be honest. When I used to drink a lot, I was you'd be barbecuing, I'd be barbecuing for the family. Now, I was what they call a functioning alcoholic. I could do everything I was doing and I was fine. But I love to barbecue and have a beer. And it took a lot out of me to go out and barbecue for the family and not drink. That was crazy. It was so hard to break that habit, and just get out of that, mentally just be like, okay, I'm not going to go down this road. So, and then I find, social gatherings, especially in the summertime, just everybody sitting around a pool or whatever, having a beer, and I can't, and I say I can't because I know that that's not the path that I want, but I know that that's not what I should be doing. So I would have to keep reminding myself that I'm doing this for me and for my family. And I kept having to remind myself of that until I finally got through that kind of those little ruts. I do get them. I mean, they're very seldom now because it's been so long, but I do get them from time to time, and I don't think much of them now. I'm so used to them that I get that thought and I go, yeah, whatever, and I move on. So, so very cool. Well, listen, I want to ask you this because, this is a podcast about parenting, and, we've kind of taken a deep dive into your past. But you know what, your path has led you to where you are today, and you're successful in your business. You and your wife have a successful relationship, successful in your faith, and you're a successful father. You got two, I say younger kids, but you've got an 11-year-old. So you got kids that are starting to get up there. What does fatherhood mean to you?
Yeah. For me, it's about just keeping that relationship open with my kids at all times, and really starting to change the legacy for my kids. Like the environment that I grew up in, the environment that my wife grew up in, it's definitely not something that we wanted to put in with our kids. So we work really hard to make sure that we're very close with our kids. We work very hard to make sure that they are walking in the right steps, that they're polite, that they say hello, that they're caring for people. And so it's really spending a lot of time with our kids in those environments and having those conversations with them that are like age appropriate, but like making sure that they know what we should be doing when in certain situations, or, hey, this person, go find that kid that's at school and sitting by himself, go say hello, go introduce yourself. Right. And they see my wife and I argue, they see us make up, they see us kiss in the kitchen, they see us dance in the kitchen, they go, ooh, but they know that whatever we're doing, if we have a fight or we're arguing about something, that we are going to make up, we're going to bring it back to the situation that we need to be in. Right. And so we made a commitment from day one when we said I do, that we'll never get a divorce. And that is something that will still hold true for legacies, or for our entire marriage. We will stay together. And yeah, there's been good years, there've been great years, there've been not so good years, right? Like being married for almost 17 years, you're not going to always be on the same page. And our kids have seen that up and down, but they've also seen us come together and pray and spend time with the Lord and spend time with them, and just making these really cool memories that doesn't have to be on a screen all day, right? Like we don't have to go out and do something just extravagant all the time. If we're together and we're going to a park, man, that's just trying to make memories with our kids is huge.
Yeah, I love that. And, you're right. Spending as much time as you can, everybody talks about it being a parent, but they really don't understand what that, I mean, when you say I'm spending as much time with my kids as possible, are you really though? Are you really spending enough time with your kids? And when you're spending that time, is it really the intentional time that you mean? Are you on your phone while you're with them? Is your mind, are you stressed about other things? Your mind kind of off in the distance, but you're physically there. I mean, those kind of things they really have to think about as a parent. But I think for you guys seem to have it down. And now these are going to be some challenging years that you're coming up into the teenage years. You're going to have some challenging moments. Yep. And it's really important. I try to teach or talk to my dads and teach my dads that talk to me or ask me questions, is that, look, when these kids are younger, that's when you really build the bond, because when they start to hit those teenage years, they don't want to hang out with you anymore. They want to go try to be independent. They're trying to get that independence is coming out of them, and they're trying to go off and do their own thing. And the last person they want to hang out with, unfortunately, is mom and dad. Right. But if you have the bond and the relationship that you have with your kids when they're younger, that will carry into their teenage years, and you'll still be able to have those conversations with them that are critical, that are important, because they are going to face a lot of challenges as teenagers. I think back with my boys and just all the different times, communication between conversations and the moments, the memories that we made as a family, and as my role as a dad with them. I consider them two of my best friends, and they're both adults now. But I consider them two of my best friends. And it's just because of the time that I spent with them. Yes. I'm a firm believer in that. Listen, I'm not a professional psychologist. I consider myself a professional dad. And I'll tell you that the time that you spend with your kids, as long as you dedicate that time to them and nothing else, it's life-changing and everlasting.
Yes, it's so huge. And even for me, like you have to set boundaries. So, I get up at 4 a.m. 6 days a week to work on my podcast stuff. And then I work a full-time job. And then come 5 o'clock, that's when I really try to shut everything down. And I do a pretty good job most days of, hey, turning off the phone and really just being present with my kids. Cause I think that's so important. Like you said, you can't have your phone out in front of you and being distracted, be present with them. And there are times when I'm like, oh crap, the boss man's calling or whatnot, and I got to go jump up. But most of the time I'm able to just shut everything down and just focus on being with my family and really trying to just build those memories on a daily basis. Like they're in school most of the days and I'm only getting 2, maybe 3 hours with them at the end of the night before it's bedtime. And so I got to really make sure that those hours are very good hours with them,
Yeah. And I'm glad that you talked about that, because I call it scheduling your time. And we talk about scheduling our time for everything. And I've talked about this countless times on my show and in interviews that I've done on shows that I've been on. But scheduling our time with our family is so important. And as much as you might think scheduling our time with our family doesn't make any sense, yeah, it does. It really does. Because listen, things come up, things get in the way. But if you don't have your family on your schedule, they're going to get pushed to the back burner, and you just can't have that. For me, as a high school basketball coach, my boys are out of high school, but I still coach because I love it. Right. Mm-hmm. But my younger son is a basketball player in college. And last year with the pandemic, they didn't have a season, but this year they do. And even though I still coach high school basketball, I just had a conversation with, I'm the associate head coach, and then there's a head coach. I had a conversation with the head coach just the other night, and I said, hey, just so you know, Brett's schedule, there may be a few times that it's going to conflict with our games. I'm going to be there for Brett. And he goes, Coach, by all means. Yeah, absolutely. Totally get it. Because that's how dedicated I am to him. He's my boy. I'm going to be there for him. Trust me, I'm going to be there for our basketball team as much as possible, but my family comes first, regardless. It doesn't matter if it's my job. It doesn't matter if my coaching, it doesn't matter what it is. My family comes first. So very cool. Well, let me ask you this. Your kids play sports?
They do. My son is a baseball player. So he's been playing since early T-ball years. I have coached him the last 4 years. It's been awesome to coach his team. My daughters played soccer and basketball, and now they're both in jujitsu. So they love jujitsu and learning that side of stuff. But, like you said, missing those games. For me, I always said I never wanted to miss my kids' games. And I worked for a company one time that sent me away for 2 weeks for a business trip. And I missed 3 of my son's baseball games being the coach. And it was like a punch to the gut. And I made a statement in that moment. And I told my boss, I'm like, look, I will never miss another one of my kids' games or an event at their school because of work. Just so you know, I will never do that again. And I never have. And I've been very clear with employers and very clear with the boss man, like, hey, my family will always come first. I'll always take them over going to a scheduled appointment or something like that. I will schedule the appointments around my family.
I love that. I've done the same thing. I'm glad that you did that because for me, I coached my boys as they grew up, and there was obviously, listen, I know parents have a situation. They may not be able to be at every single event of their kids. But for me personally, because of the lack of involvement that I had with my own parents, I didn't want to be that way with my kids. So I was like you. I told my job, my company that I worked for, I said, listen, I'm going to give you everything I got. But when these games come up or practices come up that I have to be there, I'm going to be there. And if my job didn't understand that, fortunately for me, they've understood it, and I've had no problems, and I've worked there for 24 years. So it's been great. But had they told me from day one, that's not going to work for us, I would have left. I would have went and did something else. That's how important it was to me. So I'm glad that you did that. Yeah, don't miss those games because as tough as it may be to get to every single one, the memories, listen, your kid's out on that field. He don't care about anybody else in those stands, but you and your wife. That's it. That's all he cares about. He don't care about all the knuckleheads that are out of those stands, except for you guys. So even if it's just one of you there, that means the world to him. Cause I can remember as a player playing and my parents not being there and seeing all my other friends' parents there. And I still can picture the feelings that I had at those moments. And knowing that the players that I coach now, and knowing I don't even know some of the parents of some of my players, never seen them before. And I know what that feels like. Even though they say they don't care, they do. They care. So make sure you continue to do that. That's awesome. I'm glad that you're doing that. Well, let me ask you this. If I were to ask your kids, tell me something about, or let me restate that. If I were to ask your kids to tell me something about you, what would you hope that they would say about you?
I would hope that they would say that I'm a loving dad and, who loves his wife and loves them. But I would also hope that they would say that I've always been there for them. Like whatever is going through grades, sports, whatever, I've never missed anything except for those games that I missed on that one time. And I would hope that they would say that I'm a fighter. And I don't mean that physically. I mean, I'm always fighting for our family. So whatever it takes, if I lost my job, I got laid off when my wife was 6 months pregnant with my daughter. And I was like, I just lost my job. I have a $2,400 a month mortgage payment. I got to figure it out. And I went to work for 6 months and I was splitting 5 hours of sleep just so I could pay that mortgage payment and put food on the table. And so I hope that they would say that, man, dad works hard to put food on the table, and he's such a fighter for our family, because I'll always stand up to them. And I've had to have those situations with my family and my in-laws to go, my family comes first, you guys don't, just so you know.
Yeah, that's cool. Well, one last question, and then I'll let you go. What if I were to ask you to tell me something about, or what could you tell new dads or soon to be new dads? What advice would you give them on parenting?
I would say soak up every moment that you can with them.
Right.
I mean, it goes by so fast. And I didn't think that as the early dad either, but I also think, like, we have to kind of have patience, right? Like, there's going to be days it's going to be frustrating, and they might talk back, or they might say something. You're like, we don't want to say that. Right. But I would say soak up every moment and just be present and put away that technology and protect your family. For me, the first drive home for the hospital with my daughter, like me being brand new dad, was the scariest drive in the world. Like, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm driving this car. I've got a newborn baby in the back. My wife's with with her. And literally, I live 3 miles from the hospital, but I'm driving home. One guy jumps a curb and almost hits my car with my daughter, like 2 miles away. And then another mile down the road, a motorcycle zips past me and wipes out and skids like 100 miles down the street. I'm like, what is going on? I need to get home. Like, I was so freaked out. Like, just always protect your family is all I could say. Like, be present and always protect your family.
Wow. Yeah. Wow. Those are crazy stories. Yeah, no, you're right. It does go by fast. And it's so interesting for us as dads. You can never explain what it's like to be a dad to someone who's not a dad. Right. You just can't explain it. They don't understand it. They would never comprehend it. But I tell parents all the time the same thing. Just soak up every moment, because it goes by so fast. And it's so true, because even for you, you're getting to a point where in a few years, you're going to hit those high school years, and you will never believe how fast the 4 years of high school go. It just, boom, they're done and over with. I can remember when my older son was going to high school, and now he's already through college. He's already done with college. So it goes by so quick. So yeah, soak up every moment. You're absolutely right. Yeah. Well, listen, Erik, it has been an honor, a pleasure to have you on. I'm so glad we've gotten to know each other, become friends over the last few months. Yeah. I'm looking forward to seeing what's new with you coming up, and just looking forward to continue our friendship. Thank you again for being on, man.
Oh, absolutely. Thank you for the opportunity. And like I said, man, truly an honor to be here. Really appreciate it.
Awesome. Well, listen, everybody, it's been another episode of Dad Up. Thank you guys very much for joining. Make sure you guys subscribe, leave a rating, and I'll be making sure to check you guys out on the next episode of Dad Up.
Thanks for listening to the Dad Up podcast. Be sure to subscribe so you don't miss the next weekly episode. While you're at it, leave a rating and review. And if you know someone this show can help, be sure to share it with them. Want to learn more? Check out the website at daduptribe.com or leave Bryan a message on Instagram at daduppodcast.